Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video, and Blizzard has come through. There is going to be a massive wave of class tuning for May 27th, and if you're some of the tournament teams playing in the AWC, which starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, you might be a little tilted that these changes aren't coming in before the tournament because some of them are pretty big to some of the underdogs. So they are nerfing both overperformers and buffing underperformers in group content and PvP with this round of changes. And as always, if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft and not missing out, make sure to smash the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. But let's get started. First on the bat is Augmentation Evoker. They're basically nerfing your old 2-set bonus from last patch because it's scaling a little bit too well with the personal buffs they've given to Augmentation's damage. This is just a quick little catch. I don't know if anyone was cheesing this in PvP. Maybe they were. Maybe that's the main reason, but it's also in PvE, so you guys aren't going to be able to cheese that anymore. Pres Evokers are getting a 4% healing buff, but not in PvP. A little surprising to not see in PvP, but I guess it's because they're also doing this. Living Flame is 30% increased healing. Spirit Bloom is 20% increased healing, and Echo's base healing is increased by 100%, but not the duplicated ability. So I don't know how much overall healing the actual Echo base heal is, but doubling it doesn't seem too bad. Spirit Bloom was weak, so targeting this is nice, and then Living Flame can obviously be instant cast sometimes, although I like using it mostly for damage. You can use it as an emergency heal, so across the board, some nice buffs to a healer that's underpowered at the moment. So definitely good changes there. Survival Hunter is getting some buffs. Explosive Shot is getting 15% more damage. Fury of the Eagle is getting 25% more damage. So targeting some main abilities and trying to beef those up a little bit closer to some of your other abilities. Survival is an underperformer in PvP, PvE. Good target here. Frost Mage got a 3% damage buff, and they correctly did not apply this into PvP. And the 3% guy is still here. He's still there. He's still on the payroll. And this time he's buffing Frost Mage in PvE by 3%. For Holy Paladins, a bit surprised to see Holy Paladin buff, honestly, because I actually think they're pretty good. But Lightsmith, Blessing of the Forge healing is being increased by 15%, and Lightsmith, Hammer, and Anvil healing is being increased by 20%. I personally don't like playing Lightsmith on my Paladin, so this doesn't affect me too much. I'm going to keep playing Herald. But if you're a Lightsmith main, then getting a little bit of a buff. Shadow Priest, you guys also got a little bit of attention on this patch change. Your Psychic Link is going to be doing 35% of its direct damage to targets affected by your Vampiric Touch, up from 30%. It's a little bit more extra damage around your Mind Blast. Not really huge, at least in PvP. Halo is getting buffed by 30% for any Archon Shadow Priest, which I have seen some Shadow Priests saying that they've been switching over a little bit, so that's not too bad. I think the Entropic Rift damage, though, here by 12% is probably the biggest deal, as this is one of your biggest kind of like KO abilities in PvP. So a little bit more lethal is definitely something Shadow needed. Subtlety Rogue is getting a 5% buff, but only in PvE, not in PvP. I think that's fair. Subtlety Rogue has definitely been on the come up. Restoration Shaman is receiving a bunch of changes here, and only a few of them are in PvP, but they're also getting a lot of PvP changes specifically that we'll cover a little bit later on. But for PvE, they're buffing your Riptide basically on Farseer, because Riptide's just not a good ability in PvE, so the Farseer is focused around it. So they're buffing all of the effects of Farseer. You're getting 10% more healing on Riptide. You're getting Maelstrom Supremacy increased. You're getting Offering from the Beyond now to reduce the cooldown of Riptide even further, but not in PvP, obviously. You're also getting increased mana capacity, really giga buffed in PvE to try and make it more viable in the Hydro Bubble. Now, the only thing, though, is that the Hydro Bubble will actually last longer, and that is actually going into PvP. So the one out of all the changes they chose for this is the only one that's going through. And obviously Farseer, I think, is dominating PvP, at least in arenas. So this would have definitely been overkill with the changes they're also doing for PvP. Destruction Warlock is receiving some buffs for Diabolist Warlock players. Your Rune Nation is doing 35% more, which I think is the most significant. Wicked Cleave is doing 15% more. Chaos Salvo is doing 15% more. Fellseeker is doing 15% more. And Gloom of the Nathrazia is now going to cause enemies marked by your Havoc to take 7% more damage, up from 5%. I still think a big issue with Destro is it's just so dated that your Havoc is dispellable. I just feel like that's like a really dated mechanic, at least in PvP and maybe even in PvE, because what monsters are actually going to dispel it. But these aren't too bad, and there are changes in PvP as well on top of this. I don't know if this is enough that you'll switch over, but definitely I haven't seen a lot of Diabolist Destro, so I think it's probably good that they're still keeping tabs on some of the lesser represented hero talent trees. Arms Warrior getting a buff, whirlwind damage by 100%. I don't think that's going to be a big deal in PvP, and then in PvE, I think Warriors have been underperforming a lot, so they're targeting some AoE here for that, because Whirlwind's also getting buffed for Fury Warrior. Unfortunately, even despite these buffs, 25% Thunderclap, 30% Odin's Fury, and 25% Mountain Thane Thunderblast. Maybe we could see some Mountain Thane Thunder Blast and Odin Fury warriors with these changes. But with the change to your Mortal Strike effect stacks, I think it's still a really big blow. And I don't know if this is enough. It's kind of nice, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. Now we're getting into the meat and the potatoes of the PvP changes. And we've got Balanced Druid. They're getting rid of the Wrath cheese. They don't like Wrath hitting for 6.2 million. Strangely enough, they're okay with Aim Shot hitting for like 5 million, but no Wrath, no cheesy Wrath. So the Keeper of the Grove builds that people were cheesy and stacking up regrowths to get a Wrath hit really hard, that got Giga nerfed to 25% down from 100. But they just buffed Wrath baseline by 15. This is basically just nothing has changed for Boom King. Just to say, unless you were doing the cheese is gone and nothing has changed basically. For Restoration Druid, you can't. The same type of stacking mechanic is not available to you if you wanted to cheese Wrath as Resto, and I don't think any of the other specs have access to Keeper of the Grove. So hopefully that means it's out of the game. And DKs, oh my God, Death Knights, you're not forgotten, guys. You're not forgotten. Improved Death Strike is no longer nerfed by 50% in PvP combat. You're gonna get more Death Strike healing. You need some more defense. There's some more defense. Frost Decay, you want some more damage? There's some more damage. You're getting 12% on Frost Strike and 12% on Obliterate. All right, they noticed you guys this time around. They caught some of the. They're missing one underdog. We'll talk about it at the end of it, but they got a lot of the underdogs in this update. Unholy Decay, Magus of the Dead's Shadow Bolt damage is no longer reduced. We might see some pet builds possibly pop up here for Unholy, with Magus of the Dead getting significantly buffed like this, and Festering Strike is getting buffed by 100%, so a little bit more sustain. Out from this, so you can be a little bit more durable, a little bit more sustained. Possibly some pet builds come out of this. Frosty Case could be terrifying with these in tandem at the same time. So these are definitely meta-defining changes, I think. And sadly, for people in the tournament who want to maybe use Death Knights, it's not happening until on Tuesday. For Frost Mage, they're nerfing Overpowered Barrier. It's only going to reflect 40% of the damage down from 60. And if you've looked at details with Frostfire Barrier, it's usually your number one damage in a lot of cases. So this is a significant damage loss in this, but it's still going to absorb a significant amount. Fire Mage is getting the same absorption change, which is honestly the biggest nerf to fire because it's the biggest contributing part of its damage, but they're also just buffing all of your other abilities. Pyroblast is getting 20% more damage. Fire Blast is getting 15% more damage. Fireball is getting 15% more damage. Scorch as well, 15% more. And your Frostfire Isothermic Core now causes Meteor to call down a Comet Storm only at 200% effectiveness, though, down from 250. Is the Meteor, I feel like Meteor for fire is so much weaker than Comet Storm for frost, but okay, so taking a little bit of burst away. But then Frostfire Bolt is getting giga buffed instead. So it'll be a little bit less damage on Meteor, which honestly is probably good because Meteor is super difficult to land and just all of your abilities getting buffed. You're still kind of squishy. I don't know if it's enough to, to compete with Frost overall, but it's good that they're looking at it. Maybe it is. Again, these are a lot of numbers. Definitely something that's at least making me interested to try Fire Mage on Tuesday, but could possibly not be enough. Discipline Priest, you guys are getting some buffs. Your Radiance is going to heal for 10% more, and your Ultimate Penitence, you guys, all the big pennies in the sky, is going to be doing 35% more damage and healing. So you're going to be a little bit more threatening when you're going into that. I think that's more than fair because the tree form for Resto Druid is just so godlike, relative to Ultimate Penitence, which is a very similar kind of mirrored style of ability. So that's nice. I think it's good that they're buffing the healers, get the healers excited to play their healers for Tuesday. Outlaw Rogue got a little bit of attention here as well, and as they've kind of fallen off the bandwagon. I feel like Assassination Rogue, though, has fallen a lot more, but they're going to make you a tiny bit tankier. You're going to get about 6% more stamina, so make you a little bit more durable in engagement, which will obviously be helpful to newer rogues, I think. And even top level rogues, stamina is a really strong scaling stat with how high health pools are. So a little extra baseline stamina is not too bad. Resto Shaman probably getting buffed like seemingly close to the most of any class with these changes. Earth Shield, 20% healing increase. Earth Living Weapon, 20% healing increase. Healing Rain, 15% healing increase. Surging Totem, 15% healing increase. Lively Totems from Totemic now cast a free chain heal at 150% effectiveness in PvP combat. So we're definitely worried with those Farseer changes that Totemic would just fall so far behind. So they buffed your baseline healing and then buffed Totemic a little bit more to try and equalize those two is what it looks like at the moment here. But this is quite a significant amount. Quite a significant amount. I think particularly for Earthshield. For Warlocks, they didn't forget you either. Like Warlocks DKs, you guys need a little survivability bump. You guys are getting a little survivability bump. So Demon Skin is going to be providing you 30% more armor, basically, I think, as far as damage mitigation against physical attackers, which has been the main weakness, the main gripe for any Warlock spec. And this isn't just Destro, right? It's Destro, Affliction, Demonology. So all 3 specs there, and both specs for Death Knight. You guys are going to be more tanky. And Arms Warriors are not getting away scot-free. They nerfed your execute by 15%. You know, they buffed it by 20%. And the last one, they decided to dial back on it. I'm a bit surprised they nerfed the overall percent instead of the modifiers, because I feel like it's the RNG that's the biggest issue still with it. You know, being able to go between a 2 million or 5 million execute, that's a big threshold. This just means it's now like a 850K to like a 3.9 million, maybe 4 million or something like that. Execute, definitely needed to bring it down. And they did go the direction of buffing the bleeds, which I think is a lot healthier. You know, Warrior maintains uptime, gets a lot of bleed damage. They can do bleed damage while targets are kiting them, which is also nice. So you're getting at least some damage output when you're getting kited infinitely. So overall, I think really good changes. I think some stuff that might have got overlooked was Enhancement Shaman. I just did the 2400 challenge on it. If you're following me on my live stream, I'm streaming on YouTube now and Twitch. So if you don't like using Twitch, you can watch me live here on the channel. I'll be mirroring those on multi-streams from now on, unless something happens. And then the Assassination Rogue too. I think Assassination Rogue and Enhancement Shaman are still kind of underperforming. But overall, I think these changes are all targeting really core stuff on underperforming specs in the right direction, likely refreshing the meta a lot for Tuesday. I think again for the tournament players, I probably wish that this would have shaken the meta up a little bit before the tournament, because maybe they already kind of know how the tournament's going to go. That's maybe the only disappointing part, but overall, I think this is a really good update. Let me know what you guys think in the comments though down below. Are you happy about your spec getting tuned like this? Maybe you're not if you got nerfed, but hey, you know, sometimes it got to happen. Overall, I think it's probably one of the best though. Tuning adjustments that we have seen so far, and it came out on Thursday. These usually come out on Friday. I don't know if they're trying to mix it up and throw a curveball, catch us off guard here, but I'm still on the case, guys. I'm not going to let you down. They're not going to come out here on a Thursday and I just miss it for you guys. So as always, thank you. I appreciate it for enabling me to continue living the dream here as a PvP World of Warcraft content creator. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one.